에서는 완전히 다른 지점으로 이동해 있다는 걸 느낄 때 되게 신기한 것 같아요. 네. 선생님, 세상의 모든 것은 한자리에 있다고 늘 말씀하셨지요. 언젠가 그 말을 이해하고 싶었습니다. 미혹된 자는 굽은 등을 갖게 마련이니까요. 심장이 있던 자리에 한 마리 새를 키우게 되었습니다. 잠결에 날아와 둥지를 틀더니 나가지 않아서 쫓아내려 애를 쓰다 그만 포기하고 말았습니다. 이름을 붙여주고 나니 이제는 이국의 유일한 식구가 되었습니다. 너무 아름다운 것은 때로 삶이 아닌 죽음에 육박한다는 것을 한 번도 상상한 적 없는 채 살 수 있었다면 저는 달라질 수 있었을까요? 봄은 그토록 서늘하기에 유리처럼 빛날 수 있다고. 제가 시를 쓸 때 항상 뭔가를 감춘다고 생각을 하거든요. 그렇기 때문에 알레고리로 시를 쓰는 경우도 많고 좀 현실에 있지 않은 정황이나 인물들을 끌어와서 쓰기도 하고 이 세계에 존재하지 않는 공간에서 시가 진행되기도 하고요. 그럼에도 불구하고 되게 솔직하다고 느끼신다면 그거는 아마 굉장히 시가 육박해 들어오는 지점이 있다는 칭찬이 아닐까 그렇게 느껴지고, 저는 그 세계에 벌어진 부분이 있다고 생각을 해요. 그런데 그 부분을 제가 계속 응시하고 고개를 돌리지 않으려고 애를 쓰기 때문에 그 지점에서 불편함이라는 게 발생하는 게 아닐까 하고 생각합니다. 네. 제 꿈이라고 하면 조금 거창하지만 저는 계속 시를 쓰는 게 꿈입니다. 계속해서 자기 갱신을 하면서 써나가는 것. 네.
In our headlines on this Tuesday, April 29th, here in Seoul, the Democratic Party looks to launch its committee for the presidential race on Wednesday, while the People Power Party is poised to hold a runoff election to announce its final candidate on Saturday. Meanwhile, a forest fire that furiously fanned out on Hamjisan Mountain in the southeastern city of Daegu on Monday has been contained after almost 24 hours, and authorities are now investigating its cause. On the international front, Russian President Vladimir Putin unilaterally declares a 3-day truce in Ukraine starting May 8th, that is next Thursday, 1 day ahead of Russia's Victory Day. We start on the political front today. Having elected its presidential candidate for the June 3rd election, the Democratic Party is poised to launch its campaign committee tomorrow, that is Wednesday. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
With 5 weeks left until the presidential election, the Democratic Party, having officially confirmed former leader Lee Jae-myung as its presidential candidate, is now putting together its election campaign committee. With plans to launch the committee on Wednesday, the party aims to form it with a focus on unity.
A true Republic of Korea is a community that comes together through greater unity and cooperation. That's what we need to build. Starting tomorrow, the DP will shift into campaign mode and focus all its efforts on winning the presidential election.
He has been taking steps to emphasize unity and broaden his appeal to centrist and conservative voters, mentioning the word unity 14 times in his acceptance speech on Sunday. The party said the committee will include members from various factions regardless of their political background. It has already shown such an intention by recruiting former Environment Minister Yoon Yeo-jun, known as a conservative strategist, to one of the top posts in the campaign. The party is also open to bringing in more centrist and conservative figures from across the political spectrum. Lee is reportedly planning to meet with his primary rivals, Kim Kyung-soo, former Gyeongsangnam-do Province Governor, and Kim Dong-yeon, current Gyeonggi-do Province Governor. Kim Dong-yeon cannot officially join the committee because he is a sitting governor, but Kim Kyung-soo is expected to join if asked. Liberal figures outside East faction, such as former Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun and Kim Bu-kyum, are also being considered for the campaign committee. Kang Keum-sil, a former justice minister under the Roh Moo-hyun administration, is joining the campaign as the committee's chief chair. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The People Power Party, for its part, is poised to hold a runoff election between two contenders, with the results to be shared this coming Saturday. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
It's now down to two, Kim Mun-soo and Han Dong-hoon. The People Power Party announced the winners of the second round of voting on Tuesday. The second round had been fierce, with no clear frontrunner from the 3 days of heated debates. But as the results were announced, they continued to emphasize party unity, as the Democratic Party of Korea's Lee Jae-myung, certainly not an easy opponent, awaits in the presidential election.
I'm also grateful to Han Dong-hoon for joining me in the final stage of the primary. I believe he has a bright future ahead, and I look forward to seeing him play a major role for the good of our country.
In this challenging presidential race, there are differences between Kim Mun-soo and I. But that's exactly why we must team up, like a three-legged race, and stand as one against Lee Jae-myung.
The results follow voting on Sunday and Monday under the same rules as the second round, 50% PPP members and 50% an open survey. Neither candidate secured over 50% of the total tally, leading to a runoff, proving the tightness of the race. A one-on-one debate will be held on Wednesday, followed by voting, with the final result announced on Saturday at the party's presidential race convention. Meanwhile, An Chul-soo, in his exit speech, pledged to support the winner of the race.
We must work harder to overcome the crisis facing our party. Whoever wins, I'll give my all to stop Lee Jae-myung and bring about a change in government.
Hong Jun-pyo, as he said before, declared his retirement from politics, a 30-year career with 5 terms at the parliament and 2 gubernatorial posts.
I will return to private life and live quietly. My role in this presidential race ends here.
The race yet again is between one candidate who was against impeachment, Kim Moon-soo, and one pro-impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol, Han Dong-hoon. This translates to someone more appealing to conservative and traditional PPP members versus someone more appealing to moderate and undecided voters. In addition, Kim has been openly supporting the idea of acting President Han Duck-soo running for the presidency and merging camps, while Han has even called the party's support of this a defeatist mindset. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In other news, firefighters here have been racing against time since Monday afternoon to contain a wildfire on a mountain in the southeastern city of Daegu. Our An Sung-jin files this report.
An area the size of nearly 400 soccer fields has turned into ash. At around 12:55 p.m. on Tuesday, the massive forest fire that covered Hamjisan Mountain in the city of Daegu had been put out after nearly 24 hours. The fire reportedly broke out around 2 p.m. on Monday along the ridge of the mountain, and due to strong winds of up to 15 meters per second, the fire spread rapidly. Considering that the city had blocked off walking paths as part of forest fire prevention measures, authorities will thoroughly scrutinize how the fire started. During the fire, authorities had issued a Forest Fire Response Level 3, the highest level, which is issued when damage to more than 100 hectares is expected. Approximately 260 hectares of land were affected by this fire. The Korea Forest Service had deployed more than 50 helicopters and 1,500 personnel. Daegu City had sent alert messages to residents to close their windows and make sure there isn't any additional damage due to smoke, though no casualties have been reported so far. Recent dry weather combined with warmer temperatures and a high-pressure system raised the likelihood of the fire spreading. Though the fire has been contained, authorities are advising caution.
Forest fires are still dangerous because they can spread even with a small spark under thick layers of leaves or rocks. We will be monitoring for 24 hours to make sure that the fire has been completely extinguished.
The local government had also pledged to provide support for damage investigation, psychological counseling, and property support for residents. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
A second meeting of senior delegates from APEC member states will begin this coming Saturday on Jeju Island for a 2-week session. This is according to the Foreign Ministry here. The first such gathering took place earlier in March in Gyeongju, the host city of this year's APEC summit, which is scheduled to take place in late autumn. Over 3,000 officials are expected to fly into Jeju for the latest forum that includes discussions on demographic trends and artificial intelligence. Starting in late June, the base subway fare within the Seoul metropolitan area when using a transportation card will rise to 1,550 won or slightly above $1. The current base fare for the subway stands at 1,400 won. The hike in fare follows a meeting among officials of Seoul Metro and their counterparts from Gyeonggi-do Province, Incheon City and the Korea Railroad Corporation. Russia has unilaterally called for a 72-hour truce in Ukraine starting next Thursday, ahead of its Victory Day celebration. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday unilaterally declared a 3-day ceasefire in Ukraine from May 8th to the 10th to mark the 80th anniversary of Victory Day, 2 weeks after a 30-hour truce over Easter. The latest announcement made via a telegram message added that the ceasefire was, quote, based on humanitarian considerations. It further explained that all military actions will be prohibited during the ceasefire period and called on Ukraine to follow the ceasefire protocols. It warned that if Ukraine violates the ceasefire, the Russian military would respond, quote, appropriately and effectively. The temporary ceasefire also comes as U.S. President Donald Trump warned on Saturday that he may consider introducing sanctions against Russia if Putin doesn't intend to end the war. However, the White House on Monday stressed that what Trump wants to see is a permanent ceasefire, adding that the U.S. leader has been frustrated with the lack of progress made in peace talks between Moscow and Kyiv.
He wants to see a permanent ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire, first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a video speech on Monday, also dismissed Moscow's announcement as, unquote, attempt at manipulation and called for an unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days.
Now, once again, there is another attempt at manipulation. An immediate, complete, and unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days to ensure it is guaranteed and reliable is what can provide the foundation for real diplomacy.
According to one expert, Putin's unilateral ceasefire decision is a gesture aimed at seizing the initiative in war-related negotiations and attempting to negotiate directly with Trump, bypassing Ukraine.
If I am a bit blunt here, Ukraine can only resist Russia with the help of the US. So what Putin is trying to do now is that he's trying to negotiate directly with Trump over the head of Ukrainians.
He added that Putin's underlying message is clear, that he can end the war at any time if his demands are met. 신새벽 아리랑 뉴스.
Meanwhile, a North Korean defense delegation has departed for Russia, sparking rampant speculation about its purpose. Our Kim Bo-kyung explains.
Ahead of Russia's 80th Victory Day celebrations on May 9th, North Korea's military delegation has left for Moscow to attend an international event. According to the North state-run Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, the delegation led by the Deputy Director of the General Political Bureau of the North Korean People's Army departed Pyongyang. Though the North's media said the visit was for an international anti-fascist conference, speculation has risen over the possibility of the delegation visiting Moscow to discuss Russia's Victory Day parade or North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's potential visit to Russia around that time.
Instead of attending Russia's Victory Day ceremony, the focus is likely to be on a potential North Korea-Russia summit, with Kim Jong-un's visit to Russia expected to happen around that time. Rather than participating as just another leader in a multilateral setting, Kim is likely to focus on a one-on-one meeting where his alliance with Russia and contributions to its war effort could be more highlighted.
The North's 노동신문 newspaper published Putin's recent statement thanking Pyongyang on its front page. This came a day after North Korea officially confirmed its troop deployment to Russia. Putin's statement said that the deployment was in accordance with international laws, along with the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty, which Kim and Putin signed in June last year. While expressing his deepest gratitude to North Korea, Putin claimed Russia would forever remember the heroes of Korea who sacrificed their lives for Russia and for their shared freedom. Meanwhile, as both Pyongyang and Moscow have now admitted the deployment of North Korean troops, Ukraine urged tougher sanctions on them on Monday local time. Ukraine's foreign ministry said the deployment is in violation of international laws and UN Security Council resolutions, and stressed that the deepening military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow would pose a threat not only to the Korean peninsula, but also to global security. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Come next week, the Catholic Church will begin the process of picking its next pope. Our Pyongyang has details.
The Vatican announced Monday that the conclave to elect the new pope will begin on May 7th local time. Following Pope Francis's death on April 21st, 135 cardinals under the age of 80 from around the world will gather at the Vatican to participate in the secret election. Preparations are already underway, with the Sistine Chapel closed to the public on the same day. The conclave, conducted via anonymous voting, continues until a candidate achieves a 2/3 majority. On the first day, voting will take place just once, but during the subsequent days, ballots will be cast up to 4 times daily. After each round of voting, the ballots are burned, with the color of the smoke indicating the result. Black smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel's chimney signals that no decision has been reached. However, when a pope is finally chosen, white smoke will be seen and the bells of St. Peter's Basilica will toll. And with the dates of the conclave announced, attention is now turning to potential successors who could shape the future of the Catholic Church. Highly discussed contenders include Cardinals Pietro Parolin of Italy, Luis Antonio Tagle of the Philippines, Pier Battista Pizzaballa of Italy, Peter Turkson of Ghana, and Peter Erdo of Hungary. Also among the papabili, which refers to those in the running to become the next pope, is Korean Cardinal Lazaro Yuhung-sik. Italy's most read daily newspaper, the Corriere della Sera, last week named Yu among the 12 leading candidates for the papacy. Though there is no fixed time limit, modern conclaves have typically lasted 2 to 3 days, with the longest in recent history lasting 5 days. With a more diverse college of cardinals than ever before, the Catholic community awaits the election of its new spiritual leader. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
And staying in Europe, an unprecedented power outage plunged Portugal and Spain into complete darkness on Monday. Our Park Hyo-bin has more.
Cheers erupted as lights gradually flickered back on across the Iberian Peninsula late Monday night. By early Tuesday, around 90% of Spain's national grid had been restored, with lights also returning to Lisbon. The massive blackout had plunged much of the region into chaos earlier in the day. Traffic lights went dark, causing major traffic disruption. Police were dispatched to key intersections to manually direct traffic. Subways and trains ground to a halt, leaving hundreds of tourists and residents trapped in the dark, many experiencing moments of panic. High-speed train services were also disrupted, forcing passengers to disembark.
They opened the doors so it could, freshen up and everything. After, I would say, an hour, the battery died down of the train. And then that's it. The bathrooms weren't working. So it's so stupid because everything was electronic.
As the Spanish government declared a national emergency, long lines formed outside supermarkets and gas stations as people rushed to stock up on essentials.
I don't know. We've been without electricity for a while now. We don't know how long it's going to be, so we're buying what's possible to buy for the moment.
The exact cause of the outrage is under investigation.
It's better not to speculate. We'll know the cause. We do not rule out any hypothesis, but now we must focus on the most important thing, which is to restore electricity to our homes.
The two countries held emergency cabinet meetings in response to the crisis. Spain is receiving emergency electricity from France and Morocco, but no timeline has been given for full restoration. Meanwhile, Portugal expects normal service to resume as early as Tuesday, prioritizing hospitals, airports, and railways. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Up next, we learn about a prominent Korean comic artist who continues to be celebrated for his unique tale-telling technique. Cha Yun-kyung shares his story.
Artist Koh Woo-young received high praise for raising the standard of Korean comics. He was a true storyteller who reinterpreted classics and folk tales to give them a modern viewpoint. He left a lasting impression on his readers by reinventing strong characters from retold traditional tales like 일지매 and 가루지기. The Chinese classics, such as 삼국지 and Water Margin, were also reinvented through Koh's humor and art.
We say that the history repeats itself. While I was working on Chinese classics outside, my hair stood on end several times. It is just as the same as our situation. More than a lesson. A story from 1,000 years ago could be our story too.
The comics of Koh Woo-young secured a large fan base of adult readers, opening up a new world of Korean comics. Koh also received much love from the readers, increasing newspaper sales in the process. The special exhibition, Storyteller of Our Times, Koh Woo-young, sheds light on Koh's artwork and heritage.
We planned this exhibition with the hope that people, those who have read his works and young people, can rediscover the values of artist Koh Woo-young's works.
Koh's various works have been exhibited, such as his most well-known pieces, scripts, and sketches. Visitors can see a timeline of the life of the artist and his work at the exhibition, which will be run until May 16th at Cheonggang's Comics and Animation Library in the city of Icheon, Gyeonggi-do Province. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
The atmosphere is very dry as clear weather continues every day. Dry weather advisories have been expanded to most parts of the country, and dry weather warnings are in effect for most parts of the East Coast and Chungcheongbuk-do Province, Daegu and Gyeongsang-buk-do Province. Strong winds in the inland areas will subside today, but strong winds of around 20 meters per second will blow along the coast and the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do Province until tomorrow. Small embers can turn into large fires in this wind, so please take extra precautions. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at 12 degrees, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Daegu at 10 degrees. There will be high temperatures across the country tomorrow. More rain is forecast nationwide on Thursday afternoon to relieve the dryness of the air. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. And today we touch upon the latest on partisan primaries, as well as pending national security concerns.
To set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
안녕하세요. 저는 인도네시아에서 온 방과 회원 무티아라 하이라니입니다. 반갑습니다. 인도네시아에 왔을 때 한국 드라마를 즐겨봤어요. 그러다가 한국에 와서 대학을 다니게 됐어요. 한국 사극 드라마도 즐겨봤어요. 왕과 왕비가 살고, 그리고 신하들이 회의를 하고, 그리고 궁녀들이 일하는 그런 궁궐에 관심이 생겼어요. 제가 제일 좋아하는 궁은 경복궁입니다. 그런데 AI한테 경복궁 그림을 보여달라고 했더니 그 엉뚱한 그림을 보였다는 제보가 있었어요. 예를 들면 궁 앞에 강이 있고 나룻배가 있다든지 산 꼭대기에 있다든지 이런 오해들. 제가 직접 경복궁을 소개해드릴게요. 같이 갈까요? 경복궁은 대한민국 역사와 문화의 중심지로 여겨져요. 조선시대 왕실의 그 위엄과 격식을 제대로 알 수 있는 곳이거든요. 또 경복궁은 외국인 관광객이 많이 방문하는 그 서울의 랜드마크 중 하나입니다. 제가 경복궁을 사랑하는 이유 이제 아시겠죠? 한국에 대한 잘못된 정보를 바로 찾는 일, 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
South Korea is scheduled to host an early election on June 3rd, and the new leader needs to hit the ground running amid a host of diplomatic and defense priorities. With more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Tuesday, April 29th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Now today we touch upon partisan preparations ahead of the June 3rd presidential election and the pending tasks ahead, especially on the security front as well. For more on this, I have Yang Chen-hao, a freelance journalist from Taiwan based here in Seoul currently. Chen-hao, welcome back.
Hello, good to be here.
I also have Professor Kim Jae-chun at Seogang University joining our talk virtually with the pundit's take on today's topic. Professor Kim, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Yang Chen-hao, we will start here in the studio. Let's begin with the result of the Democratic Party's primary that was shared back on Sunday.
Yes, so the former party leader Lee Jae-myung has won the nomination on landslide as the official president candidate of the Democratic Party, which was not a surprising result. And nearly 3 years ago, we saw that Lee Jae-myung lost to Yoon Suk-yeol by a margin of just 0.7%. Now it will be his second time running for the president. And according to the various polls in South Korea in these several weeks, if it's in a multi-candidate race, Lee Jae-myung maintains a commanding lead over his rivals from the Conservative, with support ranging from 40% to 50%. And the latest Gallup poll published last Friday showed that in a head-to-head matchup, Lee Jae-myung also secures about 52% support. And other Conservative candidates, when facing Lee, trail by a margin of 10 to 15 percentage points. And it appears that Lee Jae-myung is in the strong position to win the election easily, but the Democratic Party still needs to find ways to maximize the support across the Korean society. That's because a significant number of voters here still have doubts about Mr. Lee. Some even dislike him outright on his, for example, judicial risks, on his social welfare policy, having cash handouts, on his diplomatic routes, on his strongman leadership style in the Democratic Party. He and the party itself will need to convince people accepting him more.
Right. And Chen-hao, what's the latest with regard to the primary at the People Power Party?
So just 1 hour before our program went on air, the People Power Party has just held the second round of its primary election. And out of the 4 candidates, 2 of them will enter into the third round of the competition. We just got the result that the former Minister of Justice and party leader Han Dong-hoon and the former Minister of Employment and Labor Kim Moon-soo have been confirmed to enter into the third round. However, there is still a major variable at the play. As I've covered the National Assembly recently, there are unofficial rumors indicating that the acting president Han Duck-soo is very likely to resign and run the election as non-party candidate in the coming days. And if you look at various polls recently, Han Duck-soo receives the highest rate among the conservative candidates, though still having the gap with Lee Jae-myung. If Han Duck-soo really decides to run for the president too, then the final candidate from the People Power Party will need to consider to unify or to integrate with Han Duck-soo in order to maximize the vote. But the problem is Prime Minister of being the only prime minister of President Yoon's short term, many people suggest that Prime Minister Han should take his political responsibility, as also like Democratic Party is criticizing on Han's action of nominating the new constitutional judges by himself. And the National Assembly Research Service and many law professors are claiming that it is unconstitutional. So Han's controversial actions these several weeks might make him might make it difficult for him to gain the support from the liberal, from the progressive, and even the centrist voters in the future.
All right, so I suppose we'll know for sure in May then. Professor Kim now, speaking purely as a scholar, with all political inclinations aside, what do you suggest as a strategy for the Democratic Party in the upcoming election, and why?
Well, as Chen Hao just mentioned, you know, the Democratic Party, the leader there, Lee Jae-myung, is leading the poll by a significant margin. Now we have about a month left going into this June election, and many believe, including myself, that Lee Jae-myung's victory is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Unless something dramatic happens, I think his election is very likely. That said, I mean, anything can happen in 1 month, right? I mean, there is a saying that in politics, 1 week is a very long time. So I would probably recommend practicing humility. If you look arrogant, it's quite possible for voters to turn their backs. In addition, you have to be more inclusive and reach out to median voters and conservative voters as well. And this is exactly what Lee Jae-myung has been doing in recent months. So I think he has to keep doing this. On the other hand, though, Lee Jae-myung has been sort of flip-flopping his positions on many policy issues, including foreign policy issues. For instance, he has been critical of the ROC US-Japan, this trilateral security cooperation. But now he's in support of this trilateral, and he was a bit, can I say, subservient to China, saying that we don't have to meddle into Taiwan Strait affairs, you know, just to say CSA to Chinese and then CSA to Taiwanese. But now he has become a strong advocate of the United States, and all of a sudden he's quite critical of China. So there is a bit of you know, credibility issue at stake here. So I would probably recommend maintaining consistency in policy positions, at least from now on. And I think it is very important to build trust and confidence among voters.
Right. That being said, then, Professor Kim, what would you propose as a plan for the People Power Party in this latest presidential race?
I think, for one thing, PPP will have to understand that because of Yoon Suk-yeol's ill-fated decision to declare martial law, you know, South Korea is going through all these troubles and holding this snap presidential election in June this year, which was originally scheduled to take place in 2027. So party will have to admit that Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment by the Constitutional Court was the right decision. I mean, if you keep trying to put the blame on the opposition party and to defend Yoon Suk-yeol, I believe the majority of the voters will turn its back, and which is exactly what's happening in Korean politics right now. On top of that, you really have to present visions, because all PPP is doing right now is Lee Jae-myung bashing. And I think you really have to go beyond Lee Jae-myung bashing and present proactive visions, you know, visions as to how you will reorganize and restructure your party so that you can leave the remnants of pro-Yoon faction behind and then move forward. You really have to present visions as to how you can resuscitate your party and also conservative politics in general, which is in disarray, to say the least.
Right. Chen Hao, against the backdrop of partisan primaries now, an American weekly news magazine says the U.S. recently prepared South Korea for a potential nuclear attack by North Korea. Could you tell us a bit more about this particular report and, of course, its relevance?
All right, so the Nuclear and Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Agency from the United States Army has conducted the first training session in the Strategic Command facility in Seoul during the mid of April. There are totally 8 South Korean members and another 5 people from the U.S. and Korean Joint War-Fighting Headquarters attend the training. The U.S. Forces Korea emphasized that they are trying to provide necessary knowledge and skills to operate effectively in and through a nuclear environment, making them able to strengthen the deterrence against nuclear armed adversaries. And as you can see now, South Korea's political situation is currently in the transitional phase. And as we are waiting for the upcoming presidential election, and President Trump has taken office in the beginning of this year, at least for now, the United States forces remain vigilant against any potential North Korea provocations and try to show that they are really fully prepared. But based on my personal opinion, I don't think North Korea, I don't think the Pyongyang regime will take any actions before the election, as it could make the impact on the outcome and potentially benefit South Korea's conservatives. So this will be the problem. So I don't think that North Korea will have further actions in these coming weeks.
Right. That being said, then, Professor Kim, what do you suppose are the implications of this latest training session? And do you also agree with Chen Hao's opinion that North Korea is not likely to engage in any provocations during the 35 days left that we have to the presidential election?
Yeah, I agree with Chen Hao on the observation that North Koreans would dare to launch provocations in the remaining campaign days. I mean, until the snap election will take place in early June. But that said, I think we really have to stay more alert to North Korean threats. North Korea's nuclear threats have been around for about 3 decades, and there is a sense of frustration and lack of urgency in South Korea. South Korea has become a little desensitized about the kinds of threats threats that North Korea is posing. We don't really have to panic. We have to stay calm, that's for sure. But that said, now is time to stay more alert, more vigilant. In that respect, latest training sessions that the U.S. conducted with South Korea were very timely, and both countries will have to take these training sessions very seriously. Kim Jong-un has pledged many times that he would keep the country's nuclear weapons capabilities, and North Korea is estimated to have possessed around 50 nuclear warheads and continuously working on ICBMs and SLBMs. So there is all the more reason why we will have to stay more alert, and we'll have to have more training sessions like the ones that we had previously.
Professor Kim, this is an impromptu question, but marking the Trump administration's 100 days in office this week, quite a number of foreign media outlets have claimed that questions about the reliability of the Trump administration as a security partner has reignited debate about the importance, perhaps, of pursuing a nuclear arsenal, especially here in South Korea. Again, speaking purely within your capacity as a scholar, is this a topic that you have heard a number of pundits talking about, the need for South Korea perhaps to pursue its own nuclear weapons arsenal?
Well, personally, I believe that given the geopolitical location of South Korea, external balancing strategy, by which I mean alliance partnership with non-residential power, great power like the United States that doesn't really have territorial ambitions in the region, it is a must. It's not a choice. We all know that the U.S. has decreased its presence in the region, particularly with the inauguration of the second Trump administration We worry whether U.S. will be there when South Korea is attacked, say, with North Korea's nuclear weapons. But I guess first thing we need to do is to augment, now the terminology is U.S. Korea, not just U.S. extended deterrence. It's a Korea-U.S. Extended deterrence in the form of what we call CNI, a conventional nuclear integration. I think that is working. But I mean, we are talking about Trump administration and very unpredictable president sitting in the White House. So I do understand why many South Koreans are calling for, nuclearization of South Korea. But there are so many downsides that come with nuclearization of South Korea. Of course, there are upsides. Now politicians and some scholars are talking about possessing nuclear latency. I think it's also a bit of a misnomer. But I think we'll have to strengthen our rights to say, enrich uranium for industrial purposes. We are like a top 5 countries in the world that use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, and we have been a very, very exemplary country in that respect. But we don't, we don't have the right. I mean, we do have the right, but what we do is to import enriched uranium, natural uranium, and then entrust foreign countries to enrich uranium in its entirety. That's a bit absurd. So what we will have to ask for from the United States is to have more of a right to enrich uranium. Actually, it is guaranteed in the ROC-US Atomic Energy Agreement. We are allowed to enrich uranium beyond 20%. But for fear of raising many eyebrows in Washington, D.C., we don't dare to enrich uranium. So I think it is very important for South Korea to start enriching uranium and maybe hopefully reprocess spent nuclear energy. That's what we'll have to ask from the second Trump administration, not really going nuclear right away. There are so many downsides.
Right, I see. So something definitely...
Yeah,
right.
I hope my answer wasn't too long.
Oh, no, not at all, Professor. Thank you so much for sharing that answer with us. Chen House, also staying on the security front. Now, contrary to initial expectations, the defense cost sharing, it was not included in the latest tariff talks between the U.S. and South Korea. According to one U.S. military newspaper, pundits have warned against linking tariffs and troops, especially the expense of maintaining troops here in South Korea. Could you tell us a bit more about this particular coverage?
Yeah, so we already know that President Trump has shown his very strong desire asking South Korea to share more defense costs. We've seen that during his first term, he demanded that the defense costs raising from the original $0.9 billion to $5 billion every year. And this had somehow triggered a very awkward situation between South Korea and the United States. But, well, thanks to the pandemic, the United States government was extremely busy handling the chaos during 2020 and 2021, and making President Trump himself unable to immediately force South Korea to do so before ending his term. And later, after President Biden took office, the two countries had gone through 8 rounds of negotiations, and then finally a 5-year special measures agreement, so-called SMA, has been made in October last year, with South Korea paying around $1.2 billion in 2026. And it was just 6 weeks before the martial law crisis happened in South Korea. And then President Yoon was finally being impeached in the beginning of this month. So there are indeed some concerns which President Trump might want to make another deal, a new deal again with the current caretaker government, maybe separately or maybe as part of a trade package together. So it will become very controversial if that really happens, because that means the United States is gonna abrogate the agreement which made up last year with the former regime in South Korea, which will lead to a loss of the United States, the U.S. credibility. Furthermore, if it's acting President Han Duck-soo signing up the deal, then it will definitely cause very negative effect for the conservative running the campaign, especially for Mr. Han himself, since the Democratic Party and their supporters will accuse the government of making excessive concessions to the United States.
Staying with this, Professor Kim, what are your prospects with regard to the fate of defense cost sharing between South Korea and the U.S. under the Trump administration? I mean, what do you suppose would be a pragmatic approach to this particular issue between the two countries?
Well, I believe if there is one thing, really one thing that President Trump wants from South Korea, I think that one thing is for South Korea to pay more for stationing of USFK, United States forces in Korea. As Chen Hao just mentioned, many South Koreans do believe that this isn't really fair because South Korea has continuously increased its financial contributions for troop deployment in recent years. We just concluded last year in November this round of SMA, Special Measures Agreement negotiation. And the outcome of that negotiation is that we will be paying more. I mean, compared to 2025, we will be paying like 8.3% more in 2026, which isn't really an insignificant amount of money. However, it is very likely for President Trump to ask for another round of negotiation. And if that is the case, I don't think South Korea has an option. I mean, we have to comply to their request. I mean, sure, we'll have to explain to the Trump administration why paying more isn't going to really help ROK-US alliance, and paying more is going to fuel anti-American sentiments in South Korea, which is already resurfacing because of all these America first foreign policies and all. But on the other hand, I think we have to think strategically here. I mean, if we have to pay more, we should think about, you know, what we can really demand from the Trump administration in reciprocity. And if the money that we pay more, you know, say that it goes to shipbuilding cooperation between the two countries, I think South Korean shipbuilding companies can benefit. I mean, as long as the money goes to augmenting South Korea's defense and military preparedness, I think paying more is okay. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that we really have to think strategically here.
Right, for sure, of course. And this demand for greater expenses on defense, it's not a demand that the Trump administration is just making on South Korea. It's one that it's also been making to Taiwan itself. Do you suppose Taiwan and South Korea could perhaps come up with a joint way of addressing this particular...
Oh, sure, definitely, because we have confronting the very same situation that President Trump is asking both South Korea and Taiwan to pay more tariff, and now also Taiwan is trying to raise up its budget, trying to defend with China. And also we need some assistance from the United States, and we buy weapons from the United States, and Trump is also asking us to pay more. And so if we can try to make a deal, I mean, both for Taiwan and South Korea together, trying to fix the problem together, it might be another power to negotiate, more effective power to negotiate with the United States in the future. But that situation has some risks. It's kind of risky because we can imagine that if it's Lee Jae-myung being elected in the coming election, he won't try. We suggest that he won't try to he will not try to touch the issue of Taiwan. Yeah, so that will be very kind of difficult in the future.
Well, I suppose we'll have to wait and see then. All right, Chen Hao, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Professor Kim over at Seoul University, thank you very much for taking my impromptu questions as well.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid